Amitabha. Etty Hillesum was born in 1914 in the Netherlands. Her scholarly father was a schoolteacher, a vocation that did not come naturally to the bookish introvert. While his older students came to appreciate his knowledge, his younger ones considered him overly strict. In his early years as a teacher, he changed schools periodically, resulting in the family moving frequently. These frequent moves created a feeling of instability. Etty's mother had fled from the anti-Jewish pogroms in Russia to the Netherlands as a young woman. Prone to erratic mood swings, sociable and extroverted one day, reclusive the next. She ran the household chaotically. Etty and her two brothers were each exceptional in their respective fields. Etty, passionate and highly intelligent, studied for her law degree at age 18 and then studied and later taught Russian. Yap became a physician at 17, but he suffered from depression and was admitted several times to a psychiatric clinic. Misha, a gifted pianist who publicly performed Beethoven at the age of 6, also suffered emotionally and, like his older brother, spent time in a psychiatric clinic. Such was the Hillesum family when Germany invaded the Netherlands in May 1940. Like many of the Dutch, Etty did not feel personally affected by the takeover initially. She had a room in a house located in an affluent area of Amsterdam and moved unhindered throughout the city by riding her bicycle or taking public transport. She could still drink coffee or hot chocolate in the cafes, enjoy good food, meet with her students, and visit with her many friends. But like her brothers and mother, Etty also suffered from erratic mood swings and bouts of depression. Hoping to overcome them, she entered therapy in 1941 with a man with whom she would also share a romantic relationship. He recommended Etty begin meditating and writing a diary. It was a horror-filled time to begin such reflective undertakings. The German authorities had begun to impose a steady stream of restrictions intended to intimidate and humiliate the Dutch Jews. Early on, the authorities required every Dutch person over 15 to be officially registered. Given a photo identity card, they had to carry it with them at all times. The cards of Jews were marked with the letter J. Jews were forbidden to move away from Amsterdam and then barred from emigrating. They had to turn in their radios and were prohibited from entering restaurants, libraries, museums, markets, parks. The restrictions ballooned. Jews could not work for non-Jews, drive a car, buy fresh produce from non-Jewish shops. They were prohibited from using any form of public or private transport, possessing a bicycle or other means of transport, or being on the streets from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. They were forbidden to visit non-Jews, to use payphones, and then to have telephones in their homes. In an attempt to further isolate the Dutch Jews, the Nazis announced that beginning May 3rd, 1942, every Jew over the age of 5 had to wear a yellow cloth Star of David on their clothes when in public. Etty found herself no longer an anonymous young woman freely traveling the streets of Amsterdam and drinking coffee in its cafes. Now, every passerby, every shopkeeper, every Nazi sympathizer knew who she was, a Jewess. Unbowed and undeterred, this young woman, who was raised in an assimilated family that did not observe any Jewish traditions, wrote in her diary of her pride of being a Jewess. At this time, the Nazis had already begun rounding up Dutch Jews. They were taken to the Westerbork transit camp, known as the Gateway to Hell, to await deportation. Initially, 2 trains a week were packed with their allotment of human cargo. The boxcars would then be sealed for the 3-day transport of the Jews to the death centers in Poland, camps like Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen. The Nazis had put into practice their final solution: the mass murder of the Jewish people with the ultimate goal of genocide. For the Jews in the Netherlands, any hope that they would escape the same fate as those throughout most of Europe was shattered. While Etty's friends repeatedly encouraged her to hide, an act viewed not as cowardice, but as a moral obligation, she refused. Instead, she volunteered to work at Westerbork to help her fellow Jews interned there. She felt that if God wanted her to live, she would. And so from August 1942 to September 1943, other than when in Amsterdam for health reasons, she spent her time at Westerbork. In June 1943, Etty's parents and younger brother Misha were arrested in a major raid and taken to Westerbork, where Etty was. On September 7th, together with Etty, they were packed into a train, one built to carry cattle, with 1,000 other human beings, and transported to Auschwitz. The exact dates are unclear, but it is believed Etty's parents were killed upon or shortly after their arrival there. Records indicate that Etty was murdered on November 30th, 1943. She was 29 years old. All that is left of her life are her remaining diaries and letters. As a precaution, Etty had given the diaries, save the last one that she took with her, to a friend, asking that they be passed on to another friend with the request that he publish them if she did not survive. Misha died in 1944 after he was moved to the Warsaw Ghetto in German-occupied Poland. Yap, who was sent to Westerbork a few weeks after his parents and Etty were deported from there, died in 1945 on the train that was taking him away from the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp, just days after it was liberated. From Etty's diaries, we learn that as a social welfare representative at Westerbork, she looked after fellow Jews who had been interned there. Feeling a sense of solidarity with all Jews, a shared destiny, she found within herself an integral part of being, an interconnectedness that superseded a person as an individual. Egoism and self-centeredness were peeled away. Feelings of isolation and perceptions of artificial boundaries no longer existed. Etty delved ever more deeply within herself to find an inner sanctuary of peace and beauty, a balance between analytical thought and meditative contemplation. She realized universal truths that enhanced her Jewishness, while at the same time exhibiting profound universal wisdom and personal maturity. Very importantly, there is another reason Etty had refused to go into hiding. She understood that hiding would lead to fear, and fear to hatred. Unchecked, hatred will overwhelm logic and compassion with discrimination and blind cruelty. Early in her diary keeping, Etty had found herself getting caught up in thoughts of hatred for the invading Germans. She had realized that hatred coming from others and directed at her resulted in her hating them back. Such a cycle of hatred would become a never-ending quagmire. She was determined that no matter how much others hated her, she would not hate back. Hatred is not innate. It does not lie at the core of one's being. What is there is goodness. She believed that inside every hater was a human being. And so, Etty's search for that flicker of humanity in the faces of the Westerbork Nazis, even as they loaded their captives onto the transport trains and sealed the doors of the boxcars that would take her fellow Jews to the killing centers to the east. How did Etty manage to resist fear and hate when all around her the terror of being interned and then sent off to die in a gas chamber was so prevalent? Through a meticulously developed mindset of non-attachment and acceptance. Non-attachment is not clinging to phenomena, ideas, events, or material objects. When we cling to phenomena, we view them as our own and a part of ourselves. An example is our opinions and beliefs. We become increasingly attached to them. And when they are challenged, we get upset, feeling compelled to defend what we regard as ours. We become irritated with those who hold opposing or simply differing views. Arguments ensue, for others are reacting from their own attachments, as we cling just as tightly to ours. This irritation leads to simmering anger for both of us, which can all too easily morph into full-blown mutual hatred. Such hatred prevents any chance of one of us seeing any possible value or truth in the other's viewpoints. Etty was determined that this would not happen to her. With her usual resolve, she began relinquishing her attachments to what was happening around her and within her own life. It wasn't that she no longer cared, but that she cared unreservedly, free of self-interest, free of fear. And so, even while facing a terrifying future, she was able to retire to that peaceful place within her, what she had begun calling soul in her early meditations. She settled into this sanctuary and gained the strength to care for others with compassion and even moments of joy as she faced the coming days with acceptance. As she wrote, "With each minute that passes, I shed more wishes, desires, and attachments. We have to rid ourselves of all sense of security, find the courage to let go of everything." End quote. In the face of the inevitable, in trying to rid herself of all the things that people cling to, Etty strove for non-attachment and acceptance. Acceptance enables us to clearly perceive reality while we remain undisturbed and calm. For example, it is acceptance when we walk into a cold room and simply acknowledge that we're going to be uncomfortable for a while. Ultimately, acceptance can be recognizing that we are hurtling toward an unavoidable crisis and that nothing we do can alter the inevitable. Struggling against it will only make our suffering worse. Better to prepare for what is inescapable. Also, struggling requires effort and time. Would it not be better to use our remaining inner resources for worthwhile living, as Etty did by caring for others, and thus return to that interconnectedness that joins us all? Etty accepted and calmly faced the pervasive, timeless presence of this suffering. As she wrote, "One moment it is Hitler, the next it is Ivan the Terrible. One moment it is Inquisition, and the next war, pestilence, earthquake, or famine. Ultimately, what matters most is to bear the pain, to cope with it, and to keep a small corner of one's soul unsullied, come what may." End quote. Pragmatically, Etty began to mentally prepare herself for what was sure to come by imagining the arrival of the official notice ordering her to report to Westerbork for internment. She'd get her hair cut. Then she'd visit her dentist for some final dental work. Next, she'd pack her rucksack with a few much-loved books and some warm clothes. Photos weren't needed. Images of loved ones were already hung on the walls of her mind. More than ever, Etty began purposefully delighting in washing with fragrant soap, wearing a favorite blouse, drinking hot chocolate, and indulging in little luxuries that any day now would be forever denied to her. Thoughts of the British landing and saving the Jews, along with other false hopes and lingering desires, were also let go. Etty thus reduced her daily life to what was absolutely essential. Better to let go voluntarily than have everything suddenly torn away. Wiser to focus on what was essential and could remain. Love and compassion, to ease and share the suffering of her people. Joy over the beauty of a flower glimpsed through the barbed wire fence. Appreciation for the importance of being a chronicler of the truth with her diaries and letters. Gratitude to that which she called God that was within her. Etty found within herself a strength and clarity that sustained her in a time of barbarity and horror. Of her final days, we will never know. What we do know is that in just over 2 years, this young woman achieved a degree of spiritual growth that most people cannot manage after a lifetime of effort. She banished the remaining demons from her chaotic childhood. She then turned to face the likelihood that, like millions of other Jews, she would be killed in the Nazis' gas chambers. But rather than succumbing to despair, Etty found a tranquil sanctuary deep within herself, a refuge where pure, sustaining goodness existed and might be accessed in whatever conditions she would soon find herself. Like so many others in Amsterdam, Etty had heard of entire families whom she knew suddenly gone. An elderly neighbor dragged away in an overnight raid. A promising student receiving the order to await deportation to the camps and their gas chambers. She knew it could happen any day to her. Preparing herself tomorrow could be too late. Helping others next week might no longer be an option. Etty felt that she had to act right away, and did, as she strove to be the thinking heart of the camp. Brushing aside the lies, she chose to chronicle the truth. Rejecting fear and hate, she chose all-embracing love. Appreciating her little indulgences and foreseeing their approaching loss, she chose to let them go. Realizing the pervasiveness of timeless, universal suffering, she chose to face its existence and prepare to herself for its return. The result of doing all this? Remaining weeks in a lifetime dedicated not to herself, but to helping others through selfless love. Unexpected opportunities to appreciate a single shaft of sunlight treasured. Time no longer sullied by fear and hatred, spent returning to and sustaining herself in that peaceful sanctuary within. We know Etty's choices. What will ours be? Amitabha.